do you want to start, how about if we start in the handout book first?
All
To
right.
just go through the 5 or 6 pages about the fire department, and
What
then,
page- what page
then
is that?
we're gonna go to page 41 in the handout book. Fire department FTEs,
Paul, are you gonna talk first?
for a couple minutes, yeah.
Just move the mic.
And you'll see in this book, the first page shows the FTEs, and this goes back to 2014. You're based by your different ranks, chiefs and assistants and deputies, so on down the road. New hires at the bottom of the page. And then, Guy, you have four coming in pretty soon, or,
New ones?
yeah, or something, I can't remember, 3?
Well, because of Mary, we have two.
2, okay. So there'll be a couple new onto that right after the first of the year. The next page is something we show everybody every year. It's, yes.
Yes.
It doesn't vary or?
No, no,
So many, or,
yeah,
just one is very.
yeah.
Okay, the next page shows the training each of the guys or girls that get on the staff go through before they can become. Guy, do you want to talk about the training at all, or just that?
That book on me, but I-
Oh, you didn't bring, okay, sorry. This is the training each firefighter goes through in order to get their class firefighter 1 and firefighter 2. And then the next piece, page 43, is kind of important because we just approved some new turnout gear about a month or so ago. But this is the actual cost to outfit somebody once they come onto the staff, and it's $8,000. And that gets them all their coats, pants, everything that they need to work on the job. Next page, page 44, the average cost of a firefighter. Last year, the average longevity in that department was 17 years, so we used the cost of a 17-year person last year to show what that average cost is. And then the next 2 pages, sorry, not last 2 pages, but the next 2 pages show the overtime in hours going back to 2009 and the overtime in dollars going back to 2009. And then the fire department, the very last page shows the trucks and the age of the fleet. And I think everybody's already had a chance to go through that stuff within the last couple weeks, so. If we want to move to the budget, Guy's budget is on page 40 in the budget book. And we'll take it from there. I guess from the top moving down, the overtime wages, what we did in the past, looked at how many injured on duties there were right now, what it looks like going forward, looking at the hours that come from the handout book, and do some high-low regression to try to figure out, I mean, and Guy will speak to this in a second. Now I'm just kind of taking over your department, but it's kind of a, it's a guess. You never know how many fires there are going to be, how many call-outs are going to be, anything, but we have a good handle on what's happened in the past, so we kind of take it from there to move forward. Salaries, the salaries are based on the FTEs that are in place at this point in time, knowing that there's 138 people in that department right now. And then, again, your pension contribution, group insurance, workers' comp, and deferred comp are just proportioned based on how many FTEs there are. And below the line, if anybody has any questions, maybe Guy would take it from there.
Chief, could you talk about how promotions occur. It's for my edification, probably for Kathy's, since we're new. I was rather stunned to look at the salaries and to find out that of your complement, there are 10 firefighters who are making $100,000 or more, and 43 making $90,000 or more. So I would like to know about how that promotion process works. I know in the original, early intervention report, there were recommendations to the police department about promotions. I don't think there was anything in there. There were recommendations about staffing when that early intervention report was done in 2005. So just tell us how those promotions work. I think you said that they're automatic, but is there any way to get a handle on this? I mean, these salaries, I think the average salary, it's in here for a firefighter is like $88,000. Is that correct? Okay. I'm just stating the facts, so could you talk to us about promotions and what impact there is on that? That was a surprising number to me, to see the number who are above 100,000 and the number who are making 90,000 or more. It's not a criticism, it's just a fact.
You want to talk about promotions to like lieutenant, captain, and deputy?
Yes, I would like to know how those change in ranks occur.
Okay,
And how they impact compensation.
well, in order to be promoted to lieutenant, there's testing involved, and those positions are filled as somebody retires, okay?
But is there a certain number of, does the complement have a certain, is it written in the contract how many lieutenants there are supposed to be?
Correct.
Okay, could you tell us what that number is?
Well, there's 17 lieutenants, okay? And there are 7 captains, 4 deputy chiefs, chief fire inspector, deputy chief of training, an assistant chief, and a chief, and also there's a chief mechanic. Like I say, the lieutenants and captains are promoted through a testing. They're not awarded it, they're tested to be promoted. Deputy chief and above is through the mayor's prerogative.
How many of those promotions did the previous mayor make, do you know? And I'm asking this because I'm also putting this in a historical context of, I just looked at some old microfilm, going back to the Tullio days, and again, that was actually, I was looking at police promotions and demotions where, Tullio had a lot of power to do that, but how many, could you give us an idea of how many mayoral promotions there were, say, in the last 3 years under the previous mayor?
The last 3 years,
Just,
me,
yeah,
I was promoted to chief.
pardon me?
I was promoted to chief.
Right. I'm talking about, are you saying that, though, there were others that were at the discretion of the mayor?
Joe Walker was promoted to assistant chief. I was promoted to chief. You're saying in the last 3 years?
Right. I'm trying to get a sense as to, you said some of these are in the contract, but some of them are mayoral prerogative. Am I right about that? Am I right about that? So I just want to know how many promotions did the previous mayor make that may have affected this compensation?
With the deputy chiefs, there was Mike Fahey, Mike Belliot, and also were promoted by Joe Sennett. John Herman was promoted by May Schember. I was promoted by Joe Sennett. Joe Walker was promoted by Joe Sennett. Chief Fire Inspector was promoted by Joe Sennett. Vance Duncan, our Deputy Chief, was promoted by Joe Sennett.
So I'm going to ask one more question. I just want to make sure. Those promotions didn't have to occur, though.
Yes.
They were up to, pardon me?
Yes, they did.
They had to occur?
Yes, they did.
And why is that?
Okay, here's the...
That's what I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to find out how the system works.
Well, let me just back up here. I think part of our problem is, there's a lot of people at this desk, and no one's ever come up to my office and asked me what we do or how the fire department works. I think we could have got this all out of the way if somebody would just came up and talked to me. Well, you asked me a couple of questions, but as far as how we operate, it would have made this a lot simpler and quicker. There's 4 platoons. Each platoon has a deputy chief, okay? They run that deputy, that shift. That shift contains, counting the deputy, 32 personnel. We have a training deputy who does all the training for the fire department. We have the chief fire inspector. He's in charge of all the inspections and all the investigations. We have assistant chief who assists the chief. We have a chief mechanic. He's in charge of all the mechanical work we do. All those positions are necessary. You cannot eliminate any of those positions in the present format.
Are you aware of how Erie firefighter compensation compares to other municipalities in Pennsylvania?
We have gone, I have in the Pennsylvania Fire Professional Chiefs Organization, and we are very comparable to what they make.
Can you get us those figures?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Right now, you have no way to cut your budget, is that correct?
There's no way we can cut this budget.
No way.
I can go into the early intervention study, and I can show you some of the recommendations that they recommended. And they gave 4 major suggestions to cut costs. And we did 3 of them, and we even went past 1 of them.
Okay, well, you're talking about how, it should have been incumbent on us to come and ask the questions. We've been talking about early intervention and the previous early intervention, so maybe it would have been good to have had that proactive report from you before we got here tonight.
Chief, we are glad we talked on the whole. One of the things council's been pushing for is new revenue.
Okay.
And I know you and I have talked. There seems to be a little disconnect, so I'm glad I talked to you. This council, well, I'm not speaking for everybody, councils in the past and some of us have looked for new revenue sources out of every department. My suggestion is that after talking to you, I was going to ask you about some today, such as inspections, false alarms, all that. Even though we can't charge, as I understand from what Paul gave me, we can't charge like for first responder calls, okay? Or,
There are things you can look at. The insurance there's built-in fees
Right.
for us.
but I think it's time, long past time, we fight.
Volunteers go after that. I've been in touch with them and find out how they do that, how they go and they recover those fees. It's not easy, but you can get those fees.
But I think we're at the point where we got to find revenue somewhere.
Well, no disrespect, but
Yeah.
even when I was chief fire inspector, I can go back 6, 7 years. Every year we give multiple ideas of what fees to collect, and it's never been done.
Well,
I did not know, I wasn't aware that we had to take the initiative and have it done. If that's the case, I will get with the attorney and we will get stuff written up.
Because I can tell you in the past, Chief, what happened is we would make suggestions. It would die a slow death in what we called the dark hole of Calcutta, which was in the solicitor's office in the past. And that was the problem. Many things. We were pushing for garbage, parking meters, all that. It was laid up there for years. Same with a lot of your suggestions. I asked every chief, going back to Bill Hurdle. And so my suggestion is, bring those suggestions to your liaison, get the solicitor, put them in ordinance form that we can, legally do it. And I think this council, I like to think we'd be open to that.
I will guarantee you that I will do that.
Because one of the things I also looked at was, besides the false alarm calls and all that, they said that even though we may not be able to get direct insurance reimbursement, that was in the intervention plan, it did say that we could go after the ambulance company and try to squeeze them a little bit and say, you know what, you're doing business in the city of Erie, how about a little money out of your calls? Well, you know,
And that's something we have to look at.
well, we have to, you know, we can't be afraid of anything anymore.
Yes, I've opened the door to everything.
Yeah, and I'm glad you admit that, Chief,
I
because
have.
I want to see some ordinances here.
You'll see them,
Okay,
I'll guarantee you.
I want to, the only way we can help your department, same with the police, is to try to find out how we can maximize some fees, because we're not getting it out of the nonprofits, the people out there in the community are being bled every day, okay? So we have to find other ways to do things, and I'm glad you're open to it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any way we can do to help.
Because by third-class code, only the solicitor can write up and approve ordinances. We can suggest them, but that's as far as it goes.
And Kaz, you're asking for that information for the budget going forward. We aren't
Now, if we-
talking about dilly-dallying to
Well, even if we
2020.
can put them into place, let's say sometime next year, it's gonna help, okay?
So
Yeah.
can you put a deadline on when we can get this recommendation?
I'll work with Mr. Bessa ASAP and start working some stuff out.
Because we're that serious, Chief.
Oh, I understand. I mean, I'm serious too. I don't want.
We tried in the past and it just died up there, so.
I know.
I think we got a solicitor now that seems to work a little better, so.
I think you, I did sit down with you and you explained how the fire department works at the beginning of the year when I was your liaison, and I thank you for explaining that to me. Do you know by chance if you are going to have any people retire this year?
Well, unfortunately, we lost one today, or Thursday. We're having another gentleman retire, firefighter retire in January. According to our contract, they must be replaced within 30 days. Then that's per contract. You can't deviate from that. So they have to be replaced.
How are their replacements, will they be replaced at the salary of the person who has
No,
retired?
they start off as a beginning firefighter, and there's a 2 or 3 step process. After 15 months, they get another raise, and at 36 months, I think, they're at full rate.
I know this is sort of a silly question, but I've been in Catholic school, and people would donate uniforms. Is there like a less expensive uniform that's still a good uniform?
You
Do
say
people
uniform?
hand down their uniforms at all?
You're talking about these kind of uniforms, or?
Well, anything, like I'm looking at the prices of the,
The turnout gear is what keeps us alive in the fires.
right,
And we have a safety committee, and it's, if you buy substandard equipment and somebody gets injured,
I don't want you to buy substandard equipment.
okay,
Yeah,
that's something you don't want to cut corners on.
right.
What's your cost on a false alarm? How much does it cost the city? Like if you go out for a false alarm?
Well, it's just like any other call. I mean, we're there for 24 hours. We're getting paid whether we're in the firehouse or we're not. I've been a proponent of charging for false alarms for years. Mill Creek charges after 3. They hit you with a pretty good fine. And I, for the life of me, could never understand why we don't do that. It's there for the taking. Obviously, it's a fee that's going to go away, because the more you hammer them, the quicker they're fine, they're going to fix the problem. So it's not something you're going to guarantee you're going to have money, this amount of money every year. But I've always been pushing for that.
Well, what does it take to get something like that into play for the false alarm? Because I'm sure you get a lot.
Just like Cass says, I'll talk to the attorney, and we'll start working on that. And I'll get with Mill Creek and see how they word theirs, and in no sense
Mill Creek does it more for the police end of it. I mean, how many false alarms would you get to the same resident, I guess?
You get a lot.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah,
Especially when
absolutely.
they start cooking, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there's money to be made there.
Okay.
And we have to go get it.
And, you know, we're putting our people, the citizens of Erie, in danger when we take a rig out to go to those false alarms. You know,
And there's the problem, is, you know, there's always that risk that you're going to hurt somebody or kill somebody on the way to a false alarm. That's why I think it's imperative that we charge these people. Absolutely, absolutely.
I live on 43rd Street and the fire trucks come by, because I believe there's some group homes below me in the neighborhood, and there was just one just like 2 days ago or so. And you're frequent, so I'm assuming the group homes are tax-free nonprofits. Maybe we could get them to pay.
Well, that's a whole other issue I'd like to touch on while I'm here tonight, but I think your biggest problem, and I'm getting off base here, I think your biggest problem the city faces, not the fire department, not the police department, it's the tax exempt properties. That's your biggest problem. I feel as if you're really serious about helping the taxpayers, everybody's got to get out there and you've got to hammer these tax exempt properties. It's like 40% of the city is tax exempt. That's where your money's at. And you can't pussyfoot around with these people. You got to be firm with them. Say, hey, look, this city's going to go down. I don't know what you have to do to go after them, but you have to be more aggressive with them, I think.
When you were at the League of Cities, okay,
Mhm.
the other chief, I couldn't get a straight answer from Paul, and I looked into the state, it's first, well, it's not clear, Paul, it's really not clear. Are we allowed to charge a public safety fee? And that, one of the mayors in the past tried it, he was gonna do it by frontage, can we do it?
That's a legal question.
Good question, but I'd like to, like, if we could take that money and use it for police and fire, let's say, or even street plow, dedicated, I don't know if we can or can't, but I think it's something that,
I think it's something that needs to be looked
if
into.
we can't get a voluntary contribution, then I think,
I just think we're missing the boat here.
I agree.
I mean, I think everybody up there should get off their butts and go out there and hammer these.
Can you explore that one?
Pardon me?
Can you kind of explore that?
I would do that, yes.
Yeah, 'cause, it's, I don't know how the mayor feels about it, but I think it's long past that, we can't be nice anymore. I mean, we've tried,
The city's is gonna be in dire straits, and you have to do something. Cutting personnel, closing companies, it's not gonna solve the problem. It's gonna solve the problem even worse for the citizens. We're here to protect the citizens. Let me just read you something. This was in the early intervention study back in 2006. It suggested that we go down to 5 engine companies and 2 towers. That's what they suggested that we do. We went down to 5 engine companies and 1 tower, okay? Now, going down to 5 and 2, they said, on page 60, paragraph 3, the study shows that any further staff reduction further weakens an already substandard fire delivery system. We are already at the brink. We can't cut anymore, and that's coming from them too. I'm not, if I'm anything else, it's honest. We can't. We're doing the best we can with what we have.
Another issue that we know that citizens in Erie will bring up is that there's no longer, you cannot have residency requirements. If you were in charge of the world, do you have any ideas on how to encourage public safety employees to actually live in the city of Erie? Paul gave us those numbers and percentages the other day. I think police was, there were 22%. But it seems like, Chief, you've done a lot of, we recognize that there is an issue with the nonprofits, but would there be anything that you've come across in your travels or your studies about how to encourage firefighters to live in the city?
Well, that's something we could look into. I mean, as far as the talent pool, we opened it up. It used to be city residents only taking our test, and we opened it up. Now we make it countrywide to get people to apply for our position. And then to have them to move into the city, that's something we can look into.
well, one of the things that COG is doing, Chief, you were probably at the same meeting I was. We don't have to do it, but the volunteers, I think, Mayor, the volunteers are getting like a tax reduction or something. Even if we were to do some kind of incentive, at least get something out of them.
Well, I'm
Get
on
more
that.
of our employees to move back in the city.
Well, I am on that retention committee. That's something that would have to be studied and looked at. I mean, I really couldn't answer that right now. I do know there was a lot of talk floating around about changing work schedules and all this other stuff. I'd just like to bring up in the early intervention study again that they talked about, there was 4 major suggestions that they made. One was to eliminate fire communications, would save you a lot of money. We did that. Eliminate electricians, we did that too. And the big one, like I just talked, they says reduce the engine companies to 5 and 2. We not only did that, we went beyond that. We reduced our staff from 36 to 32. They also suggested that we get our employees pay 10% towards insurance. We pay 15% towards our insurance. There's a lot of suggestions down here. The one suggestion we did not do was a 24/48, because we did a study on it. It's not cost effective. And the reason being is, according to the study, just give the union personnel a 3% raise and then give them Kelly days for the last 3 days. Well, I can pretty much guarantee you that that's a contractual item. They're going to take that to arbitration. They're going to want to be paid for their hours that they make, for the hours that they work. So you're going to increase their hours from 42 hours a week to 56 hours a week. Okay? That's a big increase. Now, anybody that has any history of the unions and the city going to arbitration, the city loses almost every time. So there's a real good chance you're going to be paying them their hourly rate for the additional 14 hours. But you have to pay them straight time for 53 hours. The additional 3 hours would either be by time and a half, but they suggested Kelly days. The problem with Kelly days is that the way we staff people off, you have to have X amount of people off for vacation, because we have a lot of people and they have to get their days in. We leave 2 blank spaces. That's for somebody that has a personal day or a birthday or someone calls in sick. So if those are all taken care of, and then somebody has to get their Kelly day in, you're covering that with overtime. So that's a loser. So if you roll the dice and they give them the hourly rate for the hours they work, it's going to cost you more money than what you have right now.
But didn't early intervention say that they had never seen a staffing system like Erie's? That, I mean, that Erie's was unique?
Well, there's a lot of other departments, especially out west, that have our
I mean, early intervention was looking for ways to save money, so I'm just curious that they would have recommended something that you think would have ended up costing more.
Well, yeah, if you say you're going to give them 3%, but there's no way they're going to agree to 3%, so they're going to take you to arbitration, and you're going to roll the dice.
I just saw a story in the Pittsburgh Tribune Review about public safety salaries, and, Erie was above those salaries in Pittsburgh and the surrounding communities, and I'm wondering, Pittsburgh just exited Act 47, so I guess I would ask Paul, if Erie had gone into Act 47 a number of years ago, don't grimace, I'm asking a question. If Erie had gone into Act 47, wouldn't there have been ways to address what ends up going to arbitration? And I know you aren't an attorney, you're a finance person, but I looked at all the different cities that we've compared ourselves to in terms of the earned income tax. Nearly all those cities that have a higher earned income tax also went into Act 47. So I'm just wondering, doesn't Act 47, I'm not suggesting we do that, I'm just asking a factual question.
The one thing we found when we did the early intervention study back in 2005 and 2006 was if you're a city that goes into Act 47 and you still have your Act 111 arbitrations, at that point in time, you were not allowed to use Act 47 to countermand any kind of increases or any kind of salary negotiation requests out of the bargaining units.
How did Pittsburgh control its costs, and I was just curious. I mean, they've just exited Act 47, they now have a surplus, but do you know how they...
From the statistics and the sheets of paper we've handed you every year, one of the biggest things they did was tax their way out of it. So...
I want to bring up, they also run a 24/72 schedule. They also run a
Yeah,
24/72
they're the
schedule.
same as us.
I do want to bring up two other points, if I may, about this 2448. And Ms. Arrington, you might have an issue with this. One of the things that the city is doing very hard, really hard trying to do, is bring more diversity to the fire department, okay? Michael Outlaw has done a great job, and I've been working very close with him. We've partnered with Erie High they're creating classes to help the students, specifically the minority students, to better understand our test and have a better opportunity to pass our test. Not only that, we're reaching out to the armed forces, for the reserves, anybody that, in the reserves that want a job, take our test, especially the minority ones. And Michael has a lot of other plans in place for the following year, which is, I think, is outstanding. But the problem with this 2448 is you're gonna lay off 32 people. Now, those 32 people are the first people you have to hire back. So if we hire, on average, 3 to 5 people per year, which is even being aggressive, you're talking 6, 10, maybe even longer, before any minority has any shot of getting on this fire department. And not only that, the only 2 people of color we have, they're getting laid off. And one of them's a female. That's gonna set our program way back. You're not saving any money, you're not gonna get any diversity. And one other point I would like to bring up is the pensions. If you lose this in arbitration, they gotta get their hourly rate. Our pensioners make half of what a Class A firefighter makes, okay? If they get this, the Class A firefighters' pay is gonna go right here, right? So now, all these pensioners have to get a raise. What's that do to the pension? That costs a lot of money. Plus, you've got an additional 32 people not paying into the pension. So the pension's not funded now. It's gonna put more of a strain on the pension. That's why I think this, although it sounds wonderful, it's gonna cost you more money and be worse in the long run. That's my opinion. Any question? I mean, before you make your decisions, you've got to really look at the whole picture. That's why sometimes we probably should have got together first and talked more about how we work.
I would
love
suggest,
this.
Chief, that, like the police chief, Kathy, you're the liaison, right? Madam President, if you agree, we should schedule a chief maybe quarterly or something like that. Like we had where a police chief comes in and once in a while. Would be okay?
That's fine. And can you do us a favor? Give us a list of everything you want to talk to the solicitor about.
Absolutely.
What you said.
Every fee I can think of, I will
Okay.
put it down.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions about that? Because there's one other point I would like to bring up before I leave. It's if you have any other questions first. I want to address the pay freeze, if I may. And there's been a lot of talk about that. The pay freeze for the management. I can only speak for Joe and I can't speak for the other departments. But Joe and I feel like we've already taken quite a few cuts, and I'll explain why. Everybody in the fire department gets longevity, which basically is 0.5% for every year you work. We used to get that. We don't get that anymore. Everybody that's an EMT gets paid extra. We're EMTs. We don't get that anymore. The fire inspectors, when they're on call, they get paid additional money for that. We're on call. We don't get paid that. Now, if you look at the budget, the new budget, and you look at last year's budget, if you pay freeze us, we have firefighters, fire inspectors, lieutenants, and captains making more than we do. Now, for whatever reason, Joe and I decided to retire someday. What you've created is a situation where there's absolutely no incentive to move up that ladder.
Consider going back then? I mean, why not become a rank and file person then?
I'm too old.
Why?
I'm too old.
It's a young man's
That's a
profession.
young man's profession.
Young man or woman's profession?
Yes.
Well, I mean that, you know what I mean, I don't mean that disrespectfully. So what happens is, the people that are qualified to do our job are not going to take a cut in pay to work 5 days a week. Okay, they're not going to do it. So you might get somebody call you in and say, you know what, I'll do that job for half that cost. Okay, come on in, I'll show you what we do, and I'll guarantee you, in 2 months, he's gonna come down here and ask for a raise. I'll guarantee you. The problem is, nobody knows what we do. You have no clue what we do.
So you're saying that somebody would rather work how many days a week versus 5 days a week? Is that what you just said?
And make more money. That's what we do. We
I don't think you're making a
24/7,
very
really.
good case.
they're working 24/72, okay? We work Monday through Friday. We are the, Liz, let me get this, I know you're laughing over it, but I wanted to explain this to you.
I'm not laughing, I am astounded.
You think,
We don't have any other,
I work,
come back here and you find $140,000 that you can save in your department, and then I would consider something, but our hands are tied. I'm not voting for a budget where there are no cuts. I've said it over and over and over again, okay? The administration should have come here without just saying we're gonna have raised taxes. There had to have been some movement on expenditures, is my opinion.
well, I'm just saying that this,
And do you know what people are gonna think out there when you're saying,
what are they gonna
all
think?
these people wouldn't wanna work 5 days a week? How many people are working 5 days a week, or 6 days a week, or
You're missing the point.
part-time
No
jobs?
disrespect, you're missing the point here. They actually work more hours a week than I do. They work more hours a week than I do. I work 35 hours a week, they work 42, okay? They're putting their lives on the line. I'm not. I'm not anymore. But I do have to manage 137 people all with different personalities, a 20-some million dollar budget, and every other thing that goes along with it. That's not an easy thing to do. The only people that are qualified to do it are making more money than we are. You're gonna have to get somebody that's not as qualified or doesn't have the experience. And what's gonna happen is you're gonna have a lot of grievances. When I first took over, one of my responsibilities, and there are many of them, one of them obviously is protecting the citizens of the city, is try to save money. When I first became chief, one of the first things I looked at, there were grievances everywhere and arbitration cases. One arbitration case is gonna wipe out any savings you're gonna get from Joe and I. You get somebody in here that mismanages that, and the grievances start flowing, you're gonna spend more money you can imagine. Since I became chief, and Joe and I became chief, we sat down with you, we worked very hard. We sat down with the union, and they worked very hard to improve our relationship to the point where, through trust and communications, I've had 0 grievances in almost 3 years. That means no arbitration cases. That doesn't just happen. That's hard work on everybody's part. And that's what a manager is supposed to do. If you get somebody, if we retire, if you get somebody that's less qualified, it's gonna cost you a lot more money. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying is that before you make your decision, think it through. It's not just black and white. You gotta think through it, because it's gonna hurt you in the long run to get somebody to manage a department this size if they don't know what they're doing.
Are you saying that you're going to quit because you aren't gonna get a raise? I just wanna.
When did I
see
say
if
that?
I have that correct.
When did I say that? I says, when the day comes when I retire.
And
I
you're
am
saying that
getting old.
when you retire, though, that we would get an incompetent person to replace you.
I said it would be hard to get somebody qualified if a firefighter is making more than the head of the department. Now, anybody over that, why would they take a cut in pay to do this?
Because maybe we've just heard.
We've just heard the last couple of days about public service because of President Bush dying. I would think that maybe there's something in somebody's heart that says, I'm going to do this for public service. I'm going to do this because I always dreamed about becoming a police chief. I always admire what firefighters do. I've covered fires. I know how you risk your lives. But I guess I'm just surprised that somebody, of the way this conversation went from, let's find out if there's any efficiencies here, to saying, hey, if I retire, somebody else less competent than me is going to come in.
I'm just saying, you're gonna have a harder time finding people that are qualified because of the pay. That's as honest as I can be. I don't know of too many CEOs that aren't, I'm not saying I'm a CEO, I'm just saying, I don't know how many CEOs are making less than the guys working on the floor. There's a lot of responsibility, and we work very hard to save you money. If you get somebody in here that isn't as qualified or isn't as experienced, I'm just saying, it could hurt the product. And the product is the taxpayers in this city. That's what I'm saying.
Liz, one other point I'd just like to make is 90% of the city's budget is salaries and benefits. And so when we became aware of the severity about mid-year, we put in a policy in place that we're not going to replace anybody. When somebody leaves a position, let's first think, do we really have to replace this position? If we do have to replace it, we do with a part-time instead of a full-time to save salary and benefits. Since we implemented that, we've reduced the staff by 6 in the city. And that includes union positions and non-union positions. And some of the unions aren't real happy with us, to be honest, for doing that, but we felt it was the right thing to do. That saved in salary and benefits just under $600,000. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that we're trying to reduce and make things better, cutting on the expense side. And if there's any ideas for further cuts, we're certainly open to them.
Our problem is one of revenue. I mean, there it is right out there. People are not coming into the city, they're moving out. Even our employees have no faith in the city for whatever reason. And we sit here as council, we gotta come up with how to raise this. And I gotta listen to people out there, they love you guys, they love the police, they love all of us to a certain degree. Because at the end of the day,
I don't think they love me anymore.
well, they you know what, that's a,
But I don't care.
but the thing is, we have to figure out how to make this work, okay? There's only so much money out there. Our assessed value of our city is going down. We pay some pretty good salaries and benefits, but we have to find, that's why I jumped on you a little bit, we have to figure out a way to get revenue back.
Well, there's
Okay.
fees and there's taxes and properties. There's your answer right there.
But that's a legislative problem.
Well, that's what we have to do.
And that's our problem, but in the meantime, we have to provide a paid fire and police department. They don't in Mill Creek. Well, police they do,
Yeah, well, they're having
okay?
issues out
And
there.
some of our people live out there. The same guys that live out there have got volunteers serving them. I love the firemen, okay? And I don't want to cut anybody, believe me when I tell you this. But somewhere in this budget, somebody, including me, I haven't asked for one, I haven't got one. Okay? Didn't have one when I was in her position. So some of us have to gut it out. I mean, that's just the way it is. And we're gonna have to lead by example here at council. And, I don't know what the final outcome's gonna be, but it's a matter of revenue or cutting expenses. This is a tough budget. And to keep you and the police department and our plow driver and everybody intact, we have to find some novel ways.
Well, I'll work with you. I'll come up with any
And that's all I
fees
ask.
I can come up with, and I'll work with Ed on that. I'll do whatever I can to bring money in. Continue to work with the union to make sure we don't have any arbitration cases. Trust me, I'm doing everything I can, Joe. We are doing everything we can.
I mean, the old days are gone. I want everybody to understand
understand
that. That's out of here now. We're in new territory. We're losing people. I watch my neighborhood bleed every day. And it's not pleasant,
Well, like I say, the bottom line is taxes on properties. That's where your answer is.
Are you working to see if we can charge them something? I suggested to legislators, we need a public safety fee. That it's dedicated to public safety. Or we can include you know, plowing and stuff like that. Common things.
Well, I just want to say, one last word is you have a very dedicated fire department here, and they will do anything, they will risk their lives for anybody in this city. And we are short-staffed, but we manage. We've been kind of lucky, but we manage. So you can be assured that we will continue to do that regardless of what happens. But I would like you guys to really think about these decisions before you just hastily just make them. That's all.
Well, I would like to say this and put this on the record. For me, it's public safety first. You know, as far as the pay freezes, I'll be against that. I just want the right people in the right positions to keep our community safe.
I appreciate all you do. I am so thankful that we do have 0 arbitrations. You're right, communication is key. Yeah, whatever. Very thankful that we have a good fire department. How many sick days do the firefighters have a year?
Well, that's another thing. When this study was brought out, we got 30 a year, then we reduced that to 22 a year.
So you went from 30 to 22?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So we made a lot of adjustments since this study came out.
How many people, what is the average number of sick days that are taken per year? Do you know?
I don't have that figure for you, but I get it for you. I know it's way down than what it used to be.
So it's to the firefighters' benefit not to take sick time, because at the end of their career, they'll get a little compensation for it.
That was put in place to curb the sick days.
That's where the overtime comes in, probably more so also. Guys are taking their sick days, so now we
We have a
gotta,
lot of, believe it or not, we do get injuries on this job, and there's a lot of your overtime is long-term injuries. I would want to explain one thing. We had a big influx of overtime at the beginning of last year. I made the decision because we had all that snow. It was so bad that I couldn't guarantee I was going to get anybody to any fires. And we couldn't rely on the volunteers for a couple of reasons. One, they're having issues too. And we couldn't really rely on callbacks because nobody could get anywhere. So I brought people in, 2 companies in every house, to make sure that we got something to that fire. If you remember, Mill Creek did lose a lady during that storm because they couldn't get there. So I know it was $100,000, a lot of money, but I felt it was worth it to protect the citizens of the city. I want to make sure that we had enough people to get to the job. So that was one of the reasons our overtime was higher than normal. I want to make that perfectly clear, so if you see that.
Well, thank you very much.
If,
Appreciate the job.
any other questions? We have to go to the funeral home, so I appreciate this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Yes, that's all right.
thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Yeah. Make a copy if you want. Police chief up?
He's coming.
Hello, Chief.
The public safety fees. Chuck Heron always wanted to do something like that. I don't know what kind of records are
Well, he actually did a
still
study.
kept. Yeah,
He started measuring
because I can
property,
remember,
but nothing ever come to council, you know.
I I don't know if his studies are still around somewhere.
I don't even know if it's legal, but we need to try it. Let's test it in court, you know. That's why we have a solicitor.
Exactly.
I mean, we gotta get money somewhere. You know, we had too many people falling in the cracks.
Got a gun, let's go rob a bank.
What, you got any, can you give us any cover?
Just kidding.
Get a beer truck.
Okay, Kaz, should I start?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I think the,
Can we go to the magic?
yes, go to the handout book, page 33 first. And the first thing at the top of the page is the FTEs with rank, and we go back to 2014, so you're gonna see 6 years worth of rank there. Middle of the page, new hires per page. And then something that came up a couple years ago, so we added, were the specialty divisions where people, somebody asked, and I don't remember who it was, how many detectives do we have? And so that is off the last payroll sheets there. Since the first thing we're gonna talk about are the police civilians, on page 34, you'll see a list of who are all the backup, or what are all the backup positions that make sure that the police, both the patrol and the detectives and ID units, can work properly. Page 35, complete outfitting of a new officer once they join the staff. Page 36, the average estimated cost for an average police officer this year. In that unit, the average officer had 15 years of longevity, so you'll see that one, page 36, is an average officer. On page 37 and 38, you have the average police overtime in hours and the average police overtime in dollars, going back to 2009. And the last couple pages, the first, page 39 shows the cost of a new police car, one of the patrol units that's out there. And so this year, to fully outfit those interceptors, it was $56,000.
Do we have any deals in place that somebody gives up to us regularly?
Yes, Gannon gives us money every year, $100,000. We bought a couple cars last year. Dan, I'm sorry to speak for you. The housing authority buys a car every couple years. So there's multiple places that we're getting these cars from on an annual basis. And then the last sheet, we went through and added up all the grants and or reimbursements that we received. And you'll see that there were 7 different spots where we received about $375,000 in 2018, which helped with the police budget. So from there, from the handout book, let's go back to, and we'll bounce back to the budget book itself. And the first budget is on page 34, and that's the police civilian budget. And again, the FTEs at the bottom of the page by salary. And the top of the page, you'll see that that's a salary-driven department. As they're based in the chief's area, there's really not much that they have a need for. They don't have the repair and maintenance supplies, anything below the line. They don't, I mean, they're in Dan's area. When you've gone into the police department, you'll see a couple of the CSOs right when you get to the front door or across the hall. You have your data entry group, so all their supplies, paper, pens, pencils, and the like are all bought out of the police department. Page 35 is the police budget itself, starting at the top, your overtime and all your salaries, and that type of thing, pensions, group insurance, workers' comp deferred. And then below the line, their operating supplies, repair and maintenance, and the like. And I would like to mention, as we were talking about, Liz, as you asked about the taking money away from budgets, if you noticed in Guy's budget, his below the lines went down by about $30,000 this year, from the 18 budget to the 19 budget. And you'll see in Dan's department, Chief Spazarni's department, sorry, his is going down by $10,000, and he actually cut 6 of his line items.
That's what makes it all the more harder.
Yeah, as I said Thursday night, we've done our best to try to cut and cut and cut. And I was going to save this for the very end, but as we go through the general fund budget itself, we've actually cut from 2018 to 2019, 108 different line items, adding up to over $200,000. So not to use the more with less, but we're doing our best to try to find where we can save and scrimp.
I think, Paul, you got a good start, just suggesting that. Like when I ran my department. It's how you use that money, okay? And you cut it back, but everybody here has to understand, everybody. That's not their money, okay? And you can't go out there and get spurious things, not saying you did. But there's departments when I was controller, you can see it. You don't need that extra jacket, you don't need that. Sounds small, but the frame of mind has to develop around here, that you don't buy things just because you want it. You buy things because they're necessary, and only the people that need them. Like, we buy police officers weapons, we don't buy them for the CSOs, okay? That has to stay, that kind of thought process. In other departments around here, I used to see it, you have to get away from that attitude. We can cut even better if we just be efficient. It doesn't amount to a lot, but it's a frame of mind of how we start approaching things. That's what, I think you guys are doing a good job. That's what makes it, but some departments here have to understand it to do. You have to make sure they really watch it. That, we don't buy things we don't need. One department used to buy cameras every couple of years. Then you never saw the old cameras come back. Okay? That's what I'm talking about, stuff like that. So things have to be kept. I think we're doing good. We just want to make sure everybody keeps these pencils sharp. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. We'll get back to Dan's department, Chief's department in 2 seconds, and we'll end with the police budget on page 39, which is the Office of Traffic Court, where we've lost 1 FTE in that department, so the salaries have gone down. And then you'll see below the line some of the expense line items. The office supplies have gone down, but we're planning on doing a little bit more mailing on past dues and the like. So we're adding a little bit to the postage. And then with the renegotiation of the contract with the parking authority and the ordinance you passed this past summer as a group, we're supposed to give the parking authority $3 more per ticket. And when you average out, and I mean, Kaz, if you want to speak a little bit to that, since you and Lisa sat through that meeting of the first group last week, the collections are going up a little bit.
Collections are going up, and I was going to ask the chief to
So-
comment on that, because
Okay.
it was a real concern about, the $3 million that we heard was out there. Now, if his department needs help, in there, that's okay, we need to know. Parking Authority has said they're willing to, help out where necessary with the new computers or whatever can help to collect those parking tickets and make people understand we're serious. These are the little things that if we start collecting money there, it looks good, it sends a message, but it also helps us a little bit in the budget. And when Lisa and I sat in on that, it looks like we're more dependent on a future law maybe than any instant redemption from somebody coming in and, buying up the old ones. If I understood it correct, right, Lisa?
That'll make it a lot easier to collect
So,
if this law is passed.
yeah, going forward, they're gonna pass a law where they'll be able to kind of, actually, if you win any money at the casino, you have any money come back from income tax, anything the government gives you back on the state level, they will hold it up. They will charge that person a fee, and another fee will be charged by the company that collects it. And, that'll help a long way. Because right now, I understand we only have one man booting, but a lot of people don't take it serious. They really don't. And we have to start, like I told the fire department, we have to start finding more revenue. Whatever your department can think up, please feel free to tell us. I think, Jim, you're the liaison, right? If you think there's something out there we should address, now's the time, because we need revenue. You agree?
I absolutely agree. I'm just worried about
What?
when we were talking today, maybe you just can't send, the department out there looking.
No, Paul, I didn't mean it that way. You know what I meant? These guys are busy. I know that, because, my dad was a police officer. I know, and it's a different world today than when he was on. But a lot of people think and agree that we have too many speeders and all that, okay? That we need to be a little more proactive. I don't know how you do that, because, if I call him for a noise complaint, I understand he's probably not gonna come, so he's not busy. And that's the problem we got, okay? But maybe we have to find a way to, deputize the parking authority more on some issues. They can't do speeding and stuff, but somewhere, people just think there's a lot of people getting away with things here. That's why I said, we're viewed as, we used to have motorcycle division, used to take care of that problem. But today, I understand, they're busy. It's not the same world, but that's what you and I had a discussion about. I don't think we're as, I'm not saying go out there and be a Gestapo, but at the same time, we have to start finding people when they do bad things, And how to make that balance is gonna be tough. Believe me, I know that. Okay.
Could you please explain, like, the clothing allowance? My father said when he was a police officer, he had to pay for his holster and his entire uniform, and they don't have to do that anymore. And then I notice here it says, like, uniform allowances, laundering, and maintenance. And I used to iron his shirts, iron his pants, shine his shoes, that sort of thing. Like, could you explain the uniform, how that's fitted?
That was one, I guess, through arbitration, through contracts, where that was put in. I mean, the officers get so much for the uniform at the beginning of their career, and then each year there's a small amount that's put into a kitty so that they can replace worn out things. Sometimes there's better stuff out there that the officers buy themselves, but through the clothing contract, the guys have to look presentable.
I understand that. But like he said, he had to buy his whole uniform, like everything, and they don't have to do that anymore?
No, days gone by, officers used to have to buy their own guns, ammunition. No, that's all, no, because we've standardized a lot of things. Our training developed that our officers all use the same type of weapon, same kind of ammunition. It goes to the training. It's uniformity. It's the liability too of making sure things are done altogether right.
Chief, I want to follow up on what Kaz was talking about, and I had communicated with you about the hoping to get some legislation at the state level in terms of municipal police officers being able to use radar. So if you could just explain how that law inhibits, city police from being able to do that. And then I had a second question. I think a few years ago there was discussion about red light cameras. And I think we aren't saying this because you want to make Erie like a speed trap or, we're trying to get money from you. The number of people, I think there are a lot more distracted drivers now. We've been through a lot of discussion about, safety concerns about once the viaduct, now the viaduct is going down. To me, the safety concerns on that parkway are that nobody's going the speed limit. Nobody's going the speed limit anywhere. I was talking about stories about when I used to work nights at the newspaper, and I would get out at 2:15 in the morning, and I always approached every intersection cautiously because I figured, the bars were letting out, and Kevin and I had covered some horrific accidents, late at night where people blew through red lights. But now I'm noticing it's all the time. I think there are like 3 accidents at 8th and Lincoln, close to where I live, during the day where people are going through red lights. So kind of 2 questions, if you can talk a little bit about what the law is on tracking speeders, what could be changed, and if red light cameras would be a good thing or a bad thing. We're trying to figure out how to keep people safe in terms of traffic. So if you could talk a little bit about that, I think that would be helpful to us.
With the radar, the bill that was denied, other than the state police, nobody else in Pennsylvania is allowed to use radar.
And don't you think people are surprised to hear that? Because we always think that, I think people don't realize that that's the situation in Pennsylvania.
We have timing devices where we can time them between 2 certain points, but those points have to be certified. It's very expensive to set that all up, and then once it's set, it's in one location. The other thing we use is a portable timing device, which is light beam so far apart, but that takes 2 officers to run. A timing watch might only take 1, but again, it's very inefficient, where a radar is a simple point and get a number. They use it at the baseball stadium for a pitcher.
I know that, yes. I've seen those 100-mile-an-hour pitches, not too many.
It doesn't seem
Some in the
very hard.
90s, yeah.
But for whatever reason, also in the law, that one of the things that they're talking about is that the money made from ticketing from radar, if it should ever pass, can't be over so much of the jurisdiction's budget. So there's.
So you can't create speed traps, in other words, that's not the purpose of it.
You can't work your way out of a budget issue by saying going out and write more tickets.
Okay.
It's written in that you can't.
Like West Virginia.
Do we have a speeding problem, or is it just anecdotal? Or we certainly know that there are, distracted drivers are a huge problem, but.
With the accidents we see, the damage, there's speeders everywhere. There just aren't enough people, manpower to stop them, and people just get away with it. They'll continue.
What about red light cameras? Do you have any opinion on that?
I was just reading something very recent. I can't recall the city, but they're having an issue with the camera system, and the courts are actually weighing in. There haven't been a decision yet, so I know that departments that have had them have had issues over time, the reliability and stuff. So right now, I'd say be cautious about going that route.
Do you think, though, that we should be advocating for that radar use? I just wonder if, at least if we wrote a letter on behalf of City Council to our local delegates and tried to raise consciousness about the radar issue.
I believe the mayor's office sent a letter, and I know I've talked to Senator Bizzarro, who is one of the primary against. We have spoken about it.
Okay.
I wonder why.
Well, we have a new state rep, a former city council member, so that might be a way to start there. I wanted to ask, going back, I remember I asked this question last year about the overtime in the civilian office. I was stunned at what percentage of, and at that time, I don't think you were the chief then, were you? Like last November? Okay. Anyhow, so I asked about that, and they said, well, this is a less expensive way than if you were hiring an FTE. But it is a lot of money. It's 24% of what the salaries are. There's the salaries, and then there's an additional 24% that goes to overtime. So how is that monitored? Having come out of a place where were very scrupulous about looking at overtime, getting it approved, so it wasn't just, okay, well, we have an overtime budget, we'll use it, but can you talk a little bit about that? Is there a way to, is it being monitored, and is there any way to get a handle on it?
Absolutely. Paul and his staff bi-weekly send us reports on the budget, where we're at, and we monitor. But with the civilians, we only have so many that are assigned to each group, and they rotate with the days off covered. If anybody takes a vacation, personal, sick, bereavement, any day they take, there is no extra, there's no full-time employee to back them up. So they will always be filled with an overtime position. And through the magic of Paul's math, he can tell you that, to pay overtime to that one employee saves you that, the bigger cost isn't the overtime, it's the personnel cost of a full-time employee. So I agree with him. My problem would be if we could not fill those positions. We have some employees in City Hall that come in, and just recently we've discussed that we'll be hiring 3 part-time people so that we can plug them in when somebody's scheduled for vacation. It'll take the overtime down. Plus, the past year, there was one employee that was off sick, did not work a single day. And that employee's time had to be completely filled via overtime. That's been remedied. We're looking at 3 part-timers to help cut the overtime there.
Thank you.
All right, I have a question. In your other services, I see membership fees, subscription fees. What kind of fees and subscriptions are you talking about on the bottom of page 35?
Defer to Donna.
Like the membership fees would be for, like the,
LexisNexis,
yeah, subscriptions, LexisNexis.
Our research computer,
yeah,
Yeah,
dictation fees.
our dictation fees.
fees
We
for-
don't buy like magazines or anything like that. That's not a subscription.
CVSA
Yeah,
operators.
Yeah, certifications that people need to have, like our bomb squad, they need a license, their license fees for, their magazine storage, just to be a member,
Okay, I was
that
just
kind of
wondering.
stuff.
Right, it's not
It's not
like,
magazines.
it's not like
either.
magazines.
You think of magazine?
Yeah, no, it's not that.
No, it's okay. Chief, I asked you before, we kind of hit on it. You're okay with progress made in the ticket collecting now?
We just went through some of that. We know that the booting list got really big because there was we don't have a procedure to take anybody off the boot list. Once they owe forever. So that's why that number starts getting so big. Now, we did try to proactively start addressing it by taking one of the motorcycle guys, now that the motorcycles are put away for winter, one of those officers is assisting the boot guy. So it's basically temporarily 2 officers doing booting. And I think we've already seen a boost in the fees from that. Hopefully, we're going to stay on top of the new list, but I think that through the collection company that you guys are looking into, that's important to
Yeah,
do.
they may not be able, it seems like they're not gonna be able to help us in what's there now. But going forward, they may, of course, we gotta meet with another one yet, so.
Chief, could you speak to the new technology that is being held or being used with ticketing?
Sure. Well, besides the parking authority going to, you've heard
Yeah,
all of that
both.
stuff. Our department was lucky enough to get a license plate reader system for a car. Okay, it was a donated system. It's $20,000. They've donated it to us. It has 3 cameras to capture parked license plates on the side of the road, cars coming at you, and as the car goes away. I think on a daily it runs about 6,000 license plates a day. Okay? That car's in operation all day, all 3 shifts. So if the officer's not on their way to a call, they can stop a car because it's telling them, hey, first off, if there's a stolen car, they're gonna go get it right away. It's gonna tell them if it's a stolen license plate on the car. It'll tell them if the registration's expired, and it'll tell them if the insurance is canceled. So as those cars go by, if the officer's not already on call, they can go address that. I believe we've recovered already 3 stolen cars, a couple plates, and suspended drivers, wanted people. Their license, when you're wanted, we put your car in the system so we can capture wanted people. That's making that car much more efficient than any other car we have on the street, because the officers there don't have to sit there and run 1 plate at a time, because it's a regular patrol car. I'm told that it can capture some ridiculous amount of plates in 1 minute. Basically, you can go to the mall, have a line of cars, and just race the car down at 60 miles an hour, and it'll get every single license plate for you. There's no way you can do that by yourself. So it's becoming more efficient. The next step that we're looking, or we haven't quite got to, is that we want to take the boot list and put it in there, so that when the car goes by a bootable car, it'll then notify us, and then we can call one of the 2 boot guys and say, hey, we found one of your cars, come put a boot on it. We're gonna try to keep pushing that.
We have enough boots for all these cars.
No. We may be buying a few more.
How many do you like? I mean,
We're trying to figure it out based on what we're doing right now.
that doesn't get in your way, like, it looked kind of big, wasn't it? Did I look at it wrong?
The camera system?
Yeah, was it big?
No, the 3 cameras are on the outside, it's a regular computer in the car that, and it's tied through the cloud that we can monitor it from the station, tell you where that car's gone.
You can still put 2 guys in the front seat?
Yep. I'm waiting on an answer. I believe it was somewhere between $800 to $1,200, depending on the type of boot it is.
It brings in revenue, we have to look at it that way.
How many do you have now, currently?
I believe we're around 10 or 12 of them. 12. And then there's, each time a boot's put on a car, there's a $200
Unlock
boot fee. So to collect the tickets and that is helpful. One of the things that we'll need to explore possibly for next year is whether or not the city should get into doing the tows and the impounding of the cars. We gotta look at what the costs would be for all of that. But that's potential more income that,
Speaking of that, in the past, different police officers told me, do we get a fair, 2 questions, do we get a fair shake from the DA's office on forfeitures? On forfeitures, and also when we incarcerate people, like, for Gannon or somebody, do we get reimbursed for that?
no reimbursement, no, that's just a,
Somebody said, in the past, they
we
said,
trade services all the time with other departments and agencies, we may hold a prisoner for them, they'll return the favor by attending a meeting or something that we can't get to, or back up an officer on a call. I forgot the beginning of your.
like the DA, are we getting a fair shake on, something to do with, when we get money
The drug
back?
forfeiture money, the DA's office controls that. I can tell you that this year, and they've spent it on various trainings. They've kicked in money to send our officers to training. They have to pay for, this year, we're sending a lot of officers to other states to pick up prisoners to bring back, as well as they did pay the entire cost of a vehicle, 1 vehicle for the
So
department.
you're okay with it then?
At the moment, got no concerns.
Yeah, because the intervention, that brought that up too, and that's why, one of the things. Okay.
When you talked about you never get off of the boot list, are there people who never get unbooted also? I mean, are there cars out there that are like booted forever, or?
We take the boot, after so long, we'll tow the vehicle as an abandoned vehicle. We
Okay.
take the boot off, it goes back into service. The car goes to the junkyard. The problem is, when we boot a car that's not worth a lot of money, you may owe more fines and costs for those tickets than what the car's worth. So the people just walk away and never come back for the car.
On the other hand, we heard from somebody who came to city council, we know that we have increased fees for like just parking violations, and somebody just came to a council meeting, was it the last meeting or the meeting before, and talked about, what a hardship it was. It was like odd even parking or something, and actually had heard when we went door to door for the Summer of Hope, when Kathy and I went to East Front Street, we talked to people there. There was a woman who was in the hospital for like 3 days or 4 days, and she couldn't move her car, and you come out. So on the flip side, is there anything, what happens if you are in a situation where you need your car to go to work, and are there payment plans if you've been booted, or, do you know? I mean, is there, I'm trying to figure out how do you like balance that between,
There's always.
there's violations.
Payment plans, the clerks and the lieutenant that work in that unit, they balance it, because you can always sign up for a payment plan for the tickets before you get on the boot list is easier. Once you're on the boot list, you're gonna have to pay the full boot fee, and probably make you pay most of your back tickets. If you have some current ones, maybe they'll give you a break and say, come back in the next 30 days and pay those off, so that you don't return to the boot list, because it'll cost you another $200.
Do we have any kind of demographic profile of the most likely bootee or parking violator?
Well, the only thing I could tell you is most of the parking issues are north of 26th Street, where the streets are
And there's the,
they're a little
yeah,
narrower, and
yeah.
that's where the odd even parking is, so.
Okay. One other question, I had talked to the fire chief about promotions and ranks and everything. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I heard the questions, I'm ready for you.
I figured you were. That was kind of good for you. You got to hear them already, so.
Well, I can say that I've gone to the mayor for multiple promotions this year, and every single one of them was a replacement for somebody that had retired, okay? We're a 24/7 operation. When I'm not here, there's an officer in charge, and that officer has to have a supervisor on the street. And that's how with all the ranks, it's set up like that. And we have not promoted a single person this year that did not replace an existing person, first off. Second, Chief Santone happened to mention the early intervention plan from previously, and one of the pages from the previous plan we pulled out, and my staff and I this afternoon broke it down. And at every rank structure that they had listed in 2004, we are down. We've reduced the number of lieutenants, sergeants, and corporals. We've reduced, well, previously they reduced a captain, so the command structure has less rank now than it did at that time. So our department is doing everything we can.
That'd be good, maybe if you could email that to us, that information. I think that'd be good. And, we're asking these questions because there is a historical context there to, what had happened in administrations from either long ago or, so it's not to pick on anybody, but it's just to make sure that we're given the lay of the land.
Yeah, in this report, the same one you were quoting from, it was pointing out like one department had 21 leaders and 16 followers, okay? And that's far different than the state police or the military. And they said that we were particularly loaded in not so much the captains and lieutenants, but the corporals and the sergeants. That was, I think, what you were alluding to. So I wanted to ask you that same question. But
Corporals and sergeants are the backbone. They're the leaders of the patrolmen and detectives.
You gotta have 7 men behind you to get those stripes. Okay, to get 3 E5, you have to have 7 guys behind you.
think we're about 5 or 6 per.
But that one report looked like it was 21 here and 16.
But like I said, we can tell you that our numbers now are better than what they were then.
Yeah, we get that, George. I mean, rank is important, but rank should have a purpose. In other words, you should be leading somebody to have the rank. It shouldn't be just there for.
I believe that, other than 1 or 2 people that might be doing a particular job, everyone else has multiple
That's an
people
area where,
underneath.
like, pension gets affected and also payroll, And we're all gotta watch it.
I have 3 things. One is that system surveillance that picks up the license plates. How long do we have that for? Is it just for a test period?
No, it was donated to us. I think we have a 3-year maintenance agreement, so we hope that it will run for at least 3 years.
Great. And do the police officers get tested for their ranks too? Do they have to go through a test?
We don't have testing. Most of the testing that I've seen is very generic, and, here we have so many particulars that each unit's different. You can say detective lieutenant, but our detective lieutenants, there's 3. There's one that specializes in burglaries. So if your house is broken into, he specializes in there. You have one that does white-collar crimes, and you have one that does major crimes. And their particular fields are very, it's like going to a doctor. You don't go to one doctor for anything. There's specialties. And that's what we do in the department, is we break as much as we can into specialties so that it works better.
My last question is about police cars going home with the police officers. Would we be saving gasoline money if the cars were kept here at City Hall?
Yes, but the money that you save would really be a fraction of the safety you're getting. Most of the units that are going home are the tactical units. Those are the guys that are called the very first immediately. 2 weeks ago, I was here in the station working on some of this, and we had a call to Pizza Hut. Our first responders, as many as we could, we sent there, but the very next call is the people that have the take-home cars. The reason they have those is because when we call them, they're the first ones to come in. And to not have that equipment, to have to come into the station, to find where the car is parked and get to a call, life, we think that that's a small cost. Otherwise, we could hire more policemen to have them on station, but we think it's a good trade-off.
Have you
And
done?
the cars they're taking home, 95% of them are at the end of their life. I mean,
Do we have
cars-
GPS mapping on, because we did see that, police officers have the lowest percentage of officers who actually live in the city, 22%. So is there mapping, not to reveal specifically where officers live, but do you have to live in the city to be able to take home a police car, or can you take home, and isn't there, it's like a 15-mile radius that you have to live within? I'm wondering, I think that's really great to know about the Pizza Hut thing was horrific. That's really good information to have. But do we know that, is it people who live in the city who take the cars home? Or could you have someone who lives 15 miles away be taking a car home?
I haven't done a study, but
Okay. There's a,
there are people in the city that have them. There's people that live outside the city.
there's a Gannon professor who's really interested in GPS mapping of some things. So, there might be a way to at least provide us that information. That kind of leads to my next question, which I also asked the fire chief. If you were in charge of the world, what kind of incentives would you dream up to persuade police officers to live in the city of Erie? There has actually been, I think, is some fairly good discussion in different circles, different cities about, offering maybe housing incentives, one of those, fix up a house. Do you have anything, if you were in charge of the world, that would work to attract police officers to live in the city? If you could.
First off, put an administration together like we have now, and you try to make the improvements to the city that are being made. I think things are going in a great direction. I've been here for 28 years, and I see the collaboration between the public and private sectors and everything going on. I think that's bringing life back to the city. It's continuing to do these kind of things. I don't have any one particular thing. Some people just prefer to have land and,
There's a new guy who just became associate director of the Greater Erie Board of Realtors. I just met him on Saturday at the school board meeting. He moved here, I think, from State College, and he really has noticed the collaboration also. And he was there to think about, how realtors are telling people about what the city school system is like. So it might be a good idea. I could get you his contact information. I just think, if you get some new officers, because you've had some who've come from elsewhere, right? In recent hires have come from outside of the Erie area. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a relocation specialist to say, would you consider living in the city? Here are some of the advantages. Here's the pep talk from the police chief who says we're moving in the right direction. I
do know there's one employee that just moved into a place, let's say within 5 blocks of here.
Yeah, was it the person?
I'm not gonna.
No, I'm not going to ask. But
But
when
I'm
we
saying-
went to the Erie Insurance thing, there, that housing down there.
Good affordable housing.
I have a question for you, Chief. I didn't see it, handout, page on body cameras and cameras. Can you talk a little bit about the page that's in the
Paul did the numbers. I'll let him speak to that, and then I'll finish up.
We just did an FYI on what some of this stuff costs, so that if I know council had talked last year or so about doing some of these things, just the cost of doing it. And so we'll have to come up with some money in order to pay for some of these things. So I guess on your question, or just,
So,
like,
kind of like
30.
like doing a demonstration, like a demo.
Well, what is,
Well, that was ours, from our perspective, I guess the chief could talk to you more about that. This was just, like, when we, and Chief, you want to talk about just going down the page, the MDTs for the cars, each of the cars have these high-powered computers that are set in the cars, and now we're going to air cards with each of these computers. So there's a cost to doing that, and that way they're in constant contact with not only our building, but also the 911 center. And then if we were to go, when we replace the MDTs, and I think you were not on council yet, we did it maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. We bought the MDTs, and it was about I remember it was 100, Randy was chief at that time, so $180,000, $190,000 to fit all the patrol cars with these new computers. And the life of those things, as I said, it's been 3, 4, 5 years. And don't quote me exactly. I know Randy was the chief, so how far back am I going then? They're coming up to a point in time where it's possible those may need to get replaced. And
just over a year, probably more probable, because the 911 center is going.
And that was one of the, I'll stop. That's one of the reasons we put this in with all the new,
911 county system does all our dispatching, and next year, they're on course. Very soon, we'll be going to new radios, okay? The radio equipment's being turned over. By the end of next year, we're looking at our computer records management system, our computer-aided dispatch system, all that's going to be changed over. some of the computers in the cars are so old, the operating systems won't operate after next year. So some of them will need replaced.
Chief, I have a question. Naturally, salaries are one thing, but when it comes to the overtime wages, that's what seems to be the big $1.2 million. And I don't know if we can possibly, we get that CDBG funding. In the past, we have used some of that monies to help with community policing. I was wondering if we could possibly dip into some of that to help offset this overtime. Maybe save the city some money.
See, we're gonna
Instead of giving that,
we're gonna lose some of that.
we are gonna lose some
Right,
of it.
some of
I
the
know we're around
community
20%, I believe.
Yeah, so that number, Jim, we took just the hours that
I
are
mean,
normally used.
nothing goes
and-
down.
Yeah.
I get all that. But with new technology and all the different things we're getting, the overtime still goes up.
Yes, yes. I mean, hopefully, for the chief, you know, the less crime there is, the less overtime there is. You know,
But
we
I
can only
guess-
go by what historically has happened and say that this is how things have worked out. Losing some CDBG funding is gonna harm that overtime, so,
But they did grandfather us in, and there is monies available through that we can possibly use as a city to help offset some of this expense. Can we
They
look
gra-
into that
yes,
as a
yes, we can look into that.
possible thing?
They grandfathered us in on program dollars, not on the community policing dollars.
So are we getting that this year? Any
Co-
community
In this,
policing
in 19,
dollars?
we're gonna get some, yes.
How much?
In the budget book, it's $60,000,
Just from CDBG funding?
Correct.
For community policing?
yes.
How did it drop, or there has?
That's the
Because there
determination,
at one time, we had.
$500,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
That went to-
determination HUD made.
Boy, still needs to be a fight to be had there then.
We're
We need
working,
help.
yeah,
I
we're
mean,
working
it's
on that
right
as,
here.
oh, yeah, absolutely. We're working on that as we speak,
Road trip to DC.
yeah.
Chief, who pays for the police officers, like during festivals like Roar on the Shore, when there's a lot of people definitely downtown for several days? Does that come from City Hall to pay them, or does the Roar on the Shore Manufacturing Association or whoever is in charge of that, do they pay it?
Well, there's different events, depends on what the city's sponsoring, like Celebrate Erie is a city event, so it's basically all on us or any sponsors that the city gets. I don't know what the contract is specifically for the Roar, but in the past, they've always contributed some money towards the security. We've always added some because we felt it needed it, so we've taken some steps there. But through Dave Rocco, when he permits any event, he's charging. All the races that we have during the year downtown, the foot races and stuff, most of those groups are paying to the city. What is it?
$50 an hour.
It's
for an
50,
officer.
about $50 an hour they pay towards the city, and that's based upon how many officers we think it'll take to safely run a race, like the Santa race is coming up. I think they're hiring 9 or 10 officers that they're going to pay in order to do that, so they do get charged. There's other ones that are small that we absorb some of it.
It's our understanding, I'm using the editorial we, I think it's okay to say, Kathy Schaff and I went and looked at the cost for Roar on the Shore, and whereas in a number of years, there was a fee charged, and then there was no fee for the last couple of years. Am I right, Kathy? Where there was like a $10,000 fee, and instead, the city said, we're sponsoring this event. So are you familiar with that? Or, again, this is something that would have been before your time, so I don't want to put you on the spot for that, but, am I right, Kathy?
I understand prior that the city had basically absorbed all the costs, but we did up numbers, and we have been in negotiation with them to get some money back from it.
Okay, and speaking of negotiation, I'm wondering if we have any other options on the $35,000 fee reimbursement. Is there anything updated on that? And one of the things that I would suggest, and I think we can either do this as city council, or I have no qualms about doing this myself, is that this event also served as a campaign rally for a number of people running for office in Pennsylvania, a number of candidates. I think that we should send a letter to them pointing out that if they have the city's best interest at heart, that if they can't get the money from the person who came and led the rally, that perhaps their 3 campaigns might like to pitch in to pay this $35,000 bill. We can't afford a $35,000 bill on our ledger right now, so I'll talk to my council colleagues. I'd be happy to write a letter. I'll send them on my own to the candidates who were put in the spotlight and rallied at that rally. But is there anything new on this bill since this story came out? Any hint that we're going to get the $35,129 reimbursement from the Trump campaign? Okay, so we can move on to seek that reimbursement from other candidates. At least that's what I would recommend.
All right, Chief, getting back to my question about body cams, were you gonna try to provide a trial run or something?
Yes, we just discussed, as a matter of fact, tomorrow we have some representatives of a company coming in to talk to us about their product. We're looking in next year to have at least 3 different manufacturers come in and show us their car camera and body cam systems, and put them through some tests and have our guys look at them. You know, we look at what might work in Los Angeles, California, may not work here in the snow. So we want to test these products ourselves. You know, there was just a story just in the last month about a body camera catching fire, exploding and catching fire. So we're going to make sure that we don't go out and buy the cheapest that doesn't work the best. We're going to make sure that, you know, it's going to be safe. It's going to do what they're designed to do, because one of the issues is having body cameras that don't work at the last minute. If they fail, then we look like we're hiding something because that product didn't work at the time we needed it. So before I put my stamp of approval on anything that we're going to buy, especially when I hear estimates from other cities comparable size that they're spending almost $1.2 million for a 5-year lease of about the same number of cameras we would. If I'm going to say I want to spend $1.2 million of your money, I'm going to make sure it works right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I probably should just shut my mouth and go home. But since the fire chief started it, I'll just like to weigh in a little bit here.
Thank you.
Understand that you have just as hard of a job to do as the police and fire. We have to keep people safe. You have to fund it. It's not an easy mix. I know that I got a list of things I could tell you that at least my staff has done over and above the past year. I can give you all kinds of stat numbers here of where the crimes are and how they're down. But I understand, I'll sum it up. I understand you're trying to save the taxpayers money, but you're taking 70 hardworking city employees and you're taxing them roughly $2,000 apiece. So I'm just trying to say.
I just want to interrupt that one of the, I'm sorry for interrupting. it's not just a question of saving money, it's a question of how management works. 3% across the board with no performance reviews. I just want to make sure that that's clear, okay? When I talked to the TV person the other day, I said possibly there could be money put into the fourth quarter, but across the board is the thing that caught my attention.
A lot of the city employees, they go above and beyond their normal jobs. They volunteer for the Celebrate here, and they do all kinds of other things. But to ask those 70 people to make up $140,000, those 70 people on average are paying $2,000 additional tax. I know it's not helping, but it's also not being fair to those 70 people. So I just kind of throw that
Paying
out.
more taxes, what do you mean?
Well, if they're not taking a raise,
Yeah.
you're saving $140,000. It's 70 people. They're basically, I'm not getting $2,000 more because I'm leaving it here for the city.
All right, then I think we have to know how many of those 70 people live in the city and are going to be paying a higher earned income tax under the mayor's proposal also. There's a lot of numbers that we can work with, but thank you for giving us the fodder to pursue more data.
Yeah, I just didn't want,
That's 55%, remember I gave you guys that. And then also,
Right, but we can certainly get that number, can't we?
55%.
We can get a raw number of what those salaries are and how many of them are going to be actually paying a higher earned income tax also. So I don't know where the 2,000 is coming from. Can you explain that?
70 employees, you're saying shouldn't get a raise. The raise would equal approximately 140,000. So if you just split 140 by 70, it's $2,000 apiece. Am I correct? So I'm just saying, it just seems like those 70 people are getting taxed way more than anybody else in the system, and they're doing their job, they're doing it well, and that's all I wanted to say about it.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And like I told Chief Trustee Davis, that would be.
I agree.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You okay with risk management yet?
We
gotta put a time limit on this stuff.
No, it's Chris.
That's the way the real world has been.
Christopher? Let's do it. Risk management.
Thanks.
Just remember, Chris,
Good
you're
job.
Is this
between,
gonna be
Good
short
job.
and sweet?
Yes, it will. Ralph
Right.
is gonna talk about injured on duties.
You got a half an hour, Chris.
Yeah.
That's it.
you're between,
Jim and I are leaving.
Oh, he said he don't even need that much.
you're between Mel and rest
Come on,
time.
Chris.
How's Stacy doing? Stacy Bliley, how's she doing? She works.
Oh, she lives in, yeah, that entry.
Yeah. She doing okay? All right. Okay. That was one of my recommendations to the Senate. I always like to check on the people I recommend. Okay.
Act like him.
Yeah.
How's she going?
Mr. Mayor, Jimmy, you want to change? Let me go get you.
Come over there.
Okay. Chris is gonna talk about some of the things we've done this year, risk management wise, and not really.
Where's
wise,
Ruby when you
since
need
I
her?
let
She
him
loved
do
risk
this, but We're gonna
management.
start in the handout book on page 76.
76 handout.
Oh, the handout book, there you go.
Not the budget book.
You had to put a patriotic number on that one?
Perfect, right?
I like that.
So the first page there, 76, looks at our safety program. So it covers, this is mostly workers' comp numbers. The first table there shows our total number of claims. And obviously for this year, that number's through the end of October. And it shows the incurred number there for dollars for those years. You can see we have a nice trend going in terms of the total number of claims. Knock on wood, if November and December go well, we're gonna have the lowest number of claims we've had ever that I've seen. So that's, again, knock on wood that we have 2 good months here. The next table down there looks at lost time claims from 2010 to 2018, and it also looks at the percent of closed claims. That number deals with all the claims that year, not just the lost time claims. So for this year, we have a nice number of 77% of all of our claims in 2018 are closed. The next table down below just gives you a rundown of some of the things we've done this year in terms of safety. We had a confined space training down at wastewater. We looked at our work zone safety, and we're going through a program update there as well. We conducted our annual bureau walkthroughs and fire inspections at all of our locations. We had a fall prevention training, which actually was tied in with our confined space training. We purchased some new equipment. Over the last couple of years, I've noticed we seem to have 2 to 3 back injuries from people opening manholes. We've still used a pick, basically, that they put in one of the holes and pry it open. So I looked into finding a better way of doing it, and we found a product that we're given a free demo to try. It's essentially a magnet that magnetizes to the manhole, and then has a cart that you basically use your body power, and it lifts the manhole that way, and it has wheels, so once it's up, you can just wheel it away, as opposed to lugging. So again, what's in a trial run right now, we may look into purchasing more of those, since they do seem to be working. We'll see how it goes with the snow. And we also had a police training that dealt with report writing and depositions, which was phenomenal. We had the person that came in and did the training actually was a lawyer before being in insurance. And he actually argued in front of I think it was the 7th Court of Appeals, which is a step below the Supreme Court. So he gave us some great insight into depositions and also report writing. The next page is just a chart from Midwest Employers Casualty. They're our stop-loss carrier. This looks at average cost per claim. The orange line is the benchmark. The gray is best practice. So the benchmark is basically what they say is, I guess, where they think the average should be. The best practice being if you're doing everything as well as possible, here's the number we think you should be at. And as you can see, we are well below both of those figures.
Nice looking chart, huh?
That is a good one. 2011 had our only large stop-loss claim, which is why you see the large spike there. The next page looks at our heart and lung payments since 2010. And as you can see, it's been a not so good year for fire in terms of our heart and lung payments, but police has had a decent year.
What do you think that is?
We've had, as the chief said, we've had 5 lost time claims in fire, and 2 of them have been over a substantial amount of time. There's
Anything that stands out or nothing?
The 2 longest ones have dealt with lifting heavy patient. The one, I think he was holding the stretcher and it slipped out of his hand, and he tried to catch it, and that trying to save it basically blew out his shoulder. So yeah, rotator cuff.
Nothing from equipment malfunction or anything like that, or?
No, not that I've heard. Just from lifting, a gentleman twisted his ankle, missed a stair during a fight, the smoke, and just dangerous jobs. The next page just references the fact that as of now, the city of Erie does not fall under OSHA. That may be changing. I assume one day it will. I know there is some legislation at the state level. I don't believe it's ever been voted out of committee that I know of, but it is down there. The second half of the page talks about our self-insured status and what it takes to have that status. So you have to have proof of excess insurance, proof of the ability to handle service claims, which is why we hire TPA, the establishment of a trust or a restricted account, and then establish and maintain an adequate safety program. And it lists the things there that you need to meet.
17 points there.
16, I believe?
In 2006, how many of those did we?
Not very many. Now we're I think so. We've come a long way there.
We are not under OSHA, but how close are we to the OSHA's regulation? Or do we exceed them in some areas?
In some areas we may. When we do start implementing a new program, or when we're reviewing something old, we always try and, we always look at the OSHA standards as our guide. Again, that's not to say when we do that, we always meet those standards, either because whatever the standard is, maybe, it might be cost prohibitive, I don't want to say we're 100%, but that we do use OSHA as our guide. The next page talks about property casualty insurance. In general, this year, the market has seen a 1.5% increase in these insurances. Commercial auto actually saw its largest increase since 2011 with an 8.2% increase, mostly due to poor loss ratios. Cyber has remained pretty flat. I did speak to our broker today. We don't have hard quotes yet for next year, but he is expecting our liability insurances to remain flat. We may see 5 to 7% increase in our property insurance, though.
Where's he looking at auto?
What's that?
Go down with the auto.
We've had autos, we've done pretty good with the auto. And we are, with the new solicitor setup structure upstairs, we are looking at a different insurance structure in terms of maybe having lower deductibles, where more of our claims are turned over to the insurance company as opposed to us handling all of our claims in-house. If we went that route, I would assume we would see an increase in premiums due to the insurance companies taking on more of the risk. But we may end up saving money, again, because we wouldn't have to budget for the out-of-pocket claims that we pay.
Do we track our frequent flyers, those that get in accidents a lot?
Yes, I have a spreadsheet. You're talking city employees?
Yeah.
Yes.
Back when I used to track it a little bit, it
Yes,
was
I have-
interesting.
I have a spreadsheet. I track all of our claims, and when it's involved one of our drivers, I make sure to list their name in that spreadsheet so that I can reference that.
Correct their habits.
Right.
What happens if there is a frequent flyer, as Kaz mentioned, a frequent crasher? What happens to your spreadsheet? Where does that information go?
I would relay that to the supervisor.
Okay, but then what happens, do you know? I know it's not your job, but what happens if someone has had a number of claims, drivers?
It would depend who it is and what the circumstance is. I would assume progressive discipline would occur at that point. CDL driver, if there was any drugs or anything involved, they might be let go immediately. It would just depend on the circumstance, and that supervisor would obviously conduct the investigation. So that's it I have for property casualty. Next page talks about our group health. The first chart there looks at our average age over the years. You can see it's steadily going up, but we are still below the normal average for a group our size. Total members has decreased since 2013. Highmark has initiated, in terms of, I know everyone's heard, talked about the opiate abuse problem. We do have a designated pharmacy program in place, which identifies patterns consistent with doctor shopping, which I guess you see a lot of people that are abusing opiates. They try and go to different pharmacies to get their prescription filled. This program locks the member to obtaining their medication from one single pharmacy, which obviously helps to eliminate the access points. And the nice thing about this program, it comes as no extra cost to the city.
Now, you can use multiple pharmacies if you can't get certain medication.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That had to happen to me the other day. Yeah, I couldn't get my one pill from one place, so I had to go to another.
Like writing?
CVS to Burns, yeah. It happens, that's why I asked him.
Yeah, it's a good question.
But I know what he's getting at, that people shop a little bit.
Our generic prescription drug usage is the highest it's ever been, and obviously a substantial increase since 2010, which is great. That saves the city a lot of money there. And then below that is just what we're looking at for employee contributions in 2019.
Andrew, let me ask you about that. You've already raised them, I guess, a little bit, right?
Contributions?
I mean, over the years we have.
Yes.
Is that an area we want to address in the future, maybe, or just toss it out? What, you don't like it, Paul? or-
What?
No, I'm just saying, do we have to address that, maybe? Contributions.
15%.
That's what it is now, right?
Yeah.
Is it something we have to, I mean, going around and going to various seminars, you know, League of Cities and everything, it's always a hot topic, you know, but
We took the lead on that.
I know we did, Bob.
When you're talking about the League of Cities, we took the lead 12 years ago on raising that to a 15% contribution level, and ours is pretty close to what is a high number in.
I'm just asking,
in the
is it-
industry. No, and I.
is that a number we can
only
live with,
because
you know?
we're looking at what my wife would pay at the hospital versus what I would pay here, you know, we're actually a little higher than them. So,
Because, you know, when we talk about, you know, wages and benefits, you know, everything's on the table as far as, I'm just asking you and, you know,
Chris, I mean,
if he's, you know, if he thinks that's okay, because that topic always comes up about, you know, like when you deal with pensions and health insurance, are we
Chris, can I
contributing?
speak?
Yeah, absolutely.
As you saw on the sheet, a couple sheets, or you're gonna see it.
Yeah, it's the next
Next
sheet.
sheet, that as a self-insured, we've done a lot of work in managing our risk, and we are, as we are with comp, we're also with the health, way below where best practice and the norm of the industry, and our contributions are in line or higher than where norms are, you know.
I just want your opinion, because that's always comes up, you know. Are we where we should be compared to, like, you know, everybody else?
And I will say, I mean, at least when I came in 2006, management was the only group that was paying a comparable level to where we are now. AFSCME was making a contribution, like $10 a week or whatever, and police and fire at that time were not making any contribution at all.
Right.
But over the last 12 years, everybody's now making the same
Well, that's what I'm asking.
contribution. So I think,
So you're comfortable with it for the, going
yeah.
out in the future?
So Chris, I'm
Okay.
sorry for.
No, absolutely.
And, but what are these contributions, so the 52, 56, 134, 79, what, is that a pay period, or what is this?
That's a pay, yes, bi-weekly.
Bi-week, okay.
Every pay. Each pay, that's what comes out of an employee's paycheck based on what they're enrolled in.
That you don't get it for free, like you.
Do the employees have a wellness program, like encouraging them to walk and be healthy?
There is nothing mandatory. The city has explored that in the past and has always received pushback because those have always involved employees filling out a questionnaire, you know, so that the program can be tailored to our population. And that has always received pushback, that that information would be used against them.
But the Highmark website will allow.
I mean, let me finish. Yeah, so there's nothing mandatory in place, but everything is offered to the employees.
Smoking cessation?
Yes.
And how many, do you know what the percentage of tobacco use employees is in the city? Because I've actually been surprised, when you walk by that door, people go outside to smoke. I mean, you can smell it inside, and I'm like, my God, I just wonder do you know what the percentage of tobacco users might be among city
I
employees?
don't know that, and that's where that questionnaire would come into place.
How would do you have any ideas on how to take away that suspicion or fear? Because I think every workplace, maybe outside of the city hall right now, has a wellness program and also knows that, you know, there are certain risk factors that increase health insurance premiums. So do you have any ideas on how to build trust for that?
I don't, I mean, I don't know what you do to let them know that,
Okay.
you know, Big Brother's not gonna be looking at their information, and I know a lot of private companies actually say,
How
hey,
did the county do like a wellness program? I understand that they were able to save money on health costs by that. Was that negotiated, or could you look into that?
As far as I know, I think there might have been some incentives in terms of if you participate in it, maybe a lesser contribution.
Correct, I believe you're
I think
right,
that's
yeah.
what they did, and I don't know if
We've
that's
never
something
tried that, or?
we've never tried, I don't know if that's something that we would ever be able to do with the bargaining units and say, hey, you know, you'll pay less if you do this or not, you know what I mean? We might be able to do something where your you might pay a little bit more, I don't know.
And just, you don't know what percentage of employees use tobacco, though? You would have?
I don't know that, no.
Thank you.
I do know we have a high population with cholesterol and diabetes. I do know that. But that's
And-
from, because I get reports in terms of where our spending is, and I can see like what our prescription drugs, you know, which ones are used the most, and you see a lot of cholesterol type medications.
If there were a voluntary wellness program, because we know that obesity, we know that type 2 diabetes, tobacco use in Erie County, when we have those county health rankings, we know that we're above average. If somebody came in and said, because it's not even a question of money, it's a question about your health. If somebody came in and said, we can help you lower your cholesterol, we can help you prevent type 2 diabetes, would employees be receptive to that? Has it ever been even broached?
The only experience I can give you is I've tried to offer lunch and learns at the city, and I even sent out an email asking people to give me what they would like to see in terms of topics, and I didn't get a single reply.
Maybe we could start with city council. We could do a lunch and learn. What did Mel just say?
Oh, geez.
You and me.
No, why not? Why not start with us?
Absolutely.
And, you know, I mean, I had a heart attack in April, so I'm like a big proponent of wellness, and I was not like the poster child for a heart attack. I exercise. I never smoked, but I would love to be able to talk about, you know, reducing cholesterol and getting into an exercise habit.
Absolutely.
That would-
Like some companies have, like, they'll take a Saturday and they'll, like, walk around the peninsula or something, like, they get involved. I mean, granted, they're probably smaller than Erie, but, you know, just, that would, like, boost friendships and wellness and different things
And
like
there
that.
are a handful of employees I know that during the summer do have their walking groups that like to walk the park. I have seen that. But yeah, in terms of lunch and learns, I haven't got any response there. So yes, the page 82 is the chart that Paul referenced, which is from the Kaiser Foundation, which compares us to fully insured plans, and then other self-insured plans. And you can see that we are trending below both of those other lines, which is a nice trend. The next page just shows us the risk management fund, how we're looking at anticipated employee health claims to be around that 12.4 million number, and what goes into funding that. 1.8 million from employee contributions and 10.5 from city budgets. And the last page is just a risk management facts page for you guys to look through. But other than that, any other questions?
We're good. Thank you. We have a meeting tomorrow, though.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Baldwin, though.
Public work.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Out of here.
Did you ever watch Full Metal Jacket? That's a joke in there.
It's all mine.
Don't eat none of that stuff, that
Don't
pokey
think the
bait.
German shepherd on me.
You eat too much pokey bait, Pat. That's all.
Yeah, I gave him two.